Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bromley Lucas, and we have our guests from last week who have returned. So if you didn't last
Mhm.
week, you fill in for a treat for part two, and you can go back and watch part one. As always, we are going to start with some deep breathing to allow ourselves a chance to decompress from the day, be able to focus and remind us that this is something we can do anytime, any day, anywhere when you need a moment to just relax and decompress. So we'll do 3 deep breaths. I will count you in to 4 to breathe in, hold it for 4, and breathe out for 4. So let's practice. Let's get it done. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. One more in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Just a way to stop and remind yourself how important it is to just take a moment to breathe and decompress and feel a little better. Well, we have two of our guests. Our third one should be popping up very soon. But I will let these ladies reintroduce themselves because there may be people here this week who weren't last week. And they don't know who you are. So Diane, looks like you're unmuted, so I'm gonna let you go first. Tell them um, who you are and something cool about yourself.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I was having some problems with audio, but I hope you can hear me. I'm Diane Akins-Eigelhart. I'm a retired Houston ISD educator, and I'm a member of the Houston, Texas chapter of the Links, and that's what got our invitation here with Ms. Lucas, because we have a strong thrust with addressing human trafficking in our community. And so we've done a lot of things in the community regarding that. And that's how we got our invitation to do this conversation with Ms. Lucas. And as I said last week, the interesting part about me, and some people don't know, is that I do speak Spanish. I was a bilingual education teacher while I served in HISD, and I play the flute. I'm a little rusty on both, but I'm sure if I sort of reconnect, I can get back up to par.
Thank you. Tracy, welcome and tell us who you are and something cool about you.
Greetings. I'm Tracy Kirkland. I'm a clinical associate professor at University of Southern California. I'm also a third-year PhD student at Texas Women's University in the School of Nursing. And I'm also an adult and pediatric nurse practitioner by trade. Many of you who know me would definitely agree that I'm a community advocate. I enjoy working with patients, with families and communities with the end goal of improving health outcomes. My interest is in promoting health and wellness and to address the inequalities, the health disparities that exist, that consist of social determinants of health. I am also a member of the Houston, Texas chapter of Links Incorporated. And again, thank you for the window of opportunity to serve. I think I shared last week that I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid, but I also have my early foundations from Johns Hopkins University, where I conducted research on lead poisoning patients in communities. And that's pretty much what gave me my start and my interest in examining different health outcomes, and especially now food insecurity and older Black women. So again, thank you for the window of opportunity to serve, and I look forward to this panel tonight.
Thank you. Nisi, can you introduce yourself again? We have different audiences this week, and tell us something about yourself. You're muted.
You said tell you something interesting about myself.
Yeah, tell the audience who you are and what you do and something cool about yourself.
All right, you guys, how you doing tonight? I am the Dr. Niecy Hamilton, and I am the queen of anti-human trafficking. And my start in human trafficking came because I am a survivor of human trafficking, and I suffered through a lot of abuse for 5 years. Of my adult life, where it was just not adult, teenage going into adult life. So I was adultified. And it came through the court system and stuff, but we'll get into that in a few more minutes and stuff. But that's who I am. And something interesting about myself is I am new to tech, so this is Black History Month, and my prevention model is urban prevention, and so I brought human trafficking prevention to tech, and so now we got tech against trafficking with the Niecy's Network Incorporated. So I'm excited about my nonprofit and the work it is that I do. But something that people just, would find interesting about me is that I used to be a military police officer. So for 8 years, I served my country in the United States Navy.
Thank you for your service. And before we
Yes,
get
ma'am.
started, I forgot last week, we now start with the Black History Fact, and I do those a long time ago and current. So the current one this week is, you may not know this, Zalia Avant-Garde was a 14-year-old girl who won the Swoop Spelling Bee in 1921, not 22, I think it was 21. But this is the first African American to win. And you know the spelling bee the Swoop Spelling Bee has been going on for 100 years. So shout out to Zalia Avant-Garde. Her word was Murray, Murray. It's a genus of a tropical Asiatic tree. It's an Australian tree in Australia. So, I will be highlighting not just in February. This is ongoing, but we need to know history from way back and history now. So that's our shout out to history makers now. Tonight, I want to, we're going to continue the conversation, and Niecy's going to take a few minutes to tell her story. She is someone who was trafficked, and she's here to tell about it, and we are here to listen.
Hey everyone, again. And so I know if you guys saw the segment on last Thursday, we really didn't get a chance to get into it too much because we started talking about like the intricate ways of trafficking, which is very, very impressive because I'm really happy that people want to know because it is a social impediment on society and it is affecting the direction that businesses are going. And you want to make sure that, when you're hiring people and you say you're hiring for talent, when somebody puts their talent on the table and if it's selling their bodies, then that's what you're going to get in your company. Okay. And so we want to make sure that that is not the value that we are impressing or the value that we're saying, hey, we as executives or, as the new elites for the business structure of the new world order, that this is what's acceptable. We want to move away from that and transition. So, being 14, oh my goodness, could you imagine being 14 in my era? I mean, 14 in you all's era, it was, you had to be in the house by the street light came on, you had Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News was on, and he was like, it's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? There were just the reminders, just the culture and the moral standard. It really, really shifted the atmosphere about how parents raise their children and just having a responsibility. And I grew up in a time where everything after 99 going into the 2000s had shifted. And what I mean by shifted was, we started creating these groups of women who were solidified themselves and standing up for human rights. And human rights were adult rights. Wasn't necessarily anything dealing with children, let alone African American children. So as you can imagine, I kind of got caught up in that gap. At 14 years old, you got DFPS, which was the Department of Family Protective Service, which is still new. It was still new. It was still a new concept. And it was emerging still with how they were going to deal with at-risk youth. How were they going to deal with people who didn't want their children? You know, how did the law protect the children? How did the law protect the parents? And I grew up in foster care. I went in foster care at 11 years old, and I went in as a victim child. And I was actually raped by one of my downstairs neighbors. And he did go to jail and stuff. And I had a sane nurse, and I remember, talking to her and, going through the evidence gathering process and not really thinking that this is going to be a sanctional part of my life for the rest of my life. Like I thought that this only happened this one time. I'm only going to have to go through this one time. I'm never going to see this type of adversarial, impediments, this dichotomy. I'm never gonna have to deal with sex on this level again. And that's what you think, because you got so many caretakers trying to help give you good ideas about the new life you're going to live because you've experienced so much trauma, and they want to make sure that you have a healthy response to the trauma. So, I mean, I get it. So if you can imagine me, 11 years old, growing up in a time where people, I mean, my mother was a part of that crack era. And so you got the crack era on top of, CPS, which is very new and really didn't know how to deal with people who didn't want their children. You got the legal system, you got judges that are still new, you got judges who have conservative views about raising children. And then here I am, a sexually abused child, going into CPS at 11 years old as a victim child, and not really sure of what the future of my life is going to look like. Now, I remained in CPS custody for 3 years. And I got out at about 14 years old. So it took me 3 years to transition. So I had moved to about 22 different foster care homes, different agencies. I had switched schools a lot. I think the last school I remember going to, and I still got my ID, was Sharpstown Middle School. So, where that Bissonnette, Fondren, that southwest side of Houston is where we have the highest prostitution rates that are over there, and it's ongoing. That is the red light district of Houston, and it is very live. The red light district of Houston is alive. It's breathing. It is a mechanism. It is guerrilla warfare when it comes down to the amount of sex trafficking and prostitution that is going on over there. And I grew up right in the middle of it in foster care. So, seeing prostitution and streetwalkers was nothing, because that was every day. I mean, that's how you lived. And I never thought that would be a part of my life. I went through this system for 3 years. I get home, everything is great. Getting home because I'm at home, living with other people, and they're surrogate families, but it's not your family, and if you can imagine being 11 years old, right when you're getting to learn yourself, right when you're getting ready to learn your 10th cousin's name, and being separated from all of that, and finding your favorite cousin at the same time, because that's about the time, life is happening for you as a kid. And all of it went away for 3 years of my life, but because all I could do is imagine what was life like without, my family, and making a better life for myself without my family. So when I went back home, it would be just, a glorious reunification. But that wasn't so. I don't know if, if we ever really thought about what life would look like pushing the agenda of I'll raise this child as long as I can get a check. I see you shaking your head, Dr. Lucas, like that. I grew up in that era where, you know, because listen, y'all, I love my old school Black women, and I really want to be careful with my words because this is Black History Month, and I celebrate my Black women. I know that it was hard because I've suffered some hardships myself, and I know that, you know, when you're raising children and you have, you know, dysfunction going on in the house, and then there's no money, it just makes for like a greater hardship. And it's hard to try to make responsible decisions when there's already conflict and there's already resistance. And I can't say that these were the best options, but for the circumstance, this was the best option for the people involved. I'll say it that way because I would never say a bad word against my grandmother or against my mother, but my grandmother made some decisions that, you know, separated me from our family. I thought going back home was a good thing, but going back home wasn't so good for me, because there was no check involved at that time. Is this making sense? Yeah, because, and like I said, I want to be careful about how I word this because I'm not here to talk about my grandmother. But at that time, I was given the option to emancipate at 14 years old from my mother, meaning I would have had to divorce my mother. I did not have a father on record. My mother was in and out of jail. She was a prostitute herself. She's been arrested several times for prostitution. And she was a common streetwalker. The police knew exactly who my mother was. It was no secret. And I think that as a young girl, I was indebted with the history of my mother, that because my mother was that way, I was going to be that way as well. So if you can imagine just, you know, growing up through all of these changes and transitions in history, and then everybody's left with what to do with her next. And then I get back home and I was actually ostracized for not making the decision to emancipate, which I know that I'm 14 and I can make a decision in a courtroom about who I want to stay with. And that's Texas law to this day. Your 14-year-old child can decide which parent they want to live with. Now, I know that most parents are not thinking about it, but, you know, because you don't think about it until your kid says, I want to live with my daddy, or I don't want to stay with you anymore. And that wasn't my situation. I didn't have anybody to pick to stay with. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just forced with this decision of whether or not I want to become an adult. That was the only opportunity that was lended to me after coming out of foster care, and which I should have remained in foster care. About 9 months after going back home to my grandmother, she had passed away from breast cancer. And in the court system, she was on record as my SMC. And so SMC is a sole managing conservator. So she was my only relative. She was my only parent. She was the only one who had ever claimed me. And once she passed, her children, which would be my aunts and uncles, decided that I wasn't fit for the next phase of their world, their life, their understanding of how it went, because I didn't come with a check and I was abandoned. I was left in some apartments called Windcrest on West Road, and it's adjacent to the freeway on 45 at West Road. And there's a Walmart that sits right there. It's more built out now, but before it was just the Walmart and the academy that was over there, if you guys remember. And so there was a lot of land. There was a huge field separating the back of the Walmart to the apartments. And so I lived in my grandmother's apartment because she was on housing for as long as I could, until the housing authorities literally came and put me out of the house. I was trespassing. I wasn't supposed to be there. They didn't know who I was. They could have arrested me, and they didn't. So because at that point, being abandoned, survival skills kicked in immediately. Like, this is fight, flight, or fear. Like, not what do I do? How do I do this? And still compliment going to school. That was the whole thing. How do I do this? Compliment going to school and eat, because I needed to eat, y'all. So I'm 14, being transitioned twice now. Not twice, really 3 times, transitioning from basically being in foster care is like going to jail, right? 3 hats in the cot. You get your meals on time. You're going to school. Somebody's watching you. You got people put paperwork, jotting down notes about your life for 3 years. Then I transitioned out of that into going home to nobody's checking and calling on you. There's nobody taking notes for you. There's nobody checking up to see if you ate for that day or if you have enough underwear and socks, and that you can live a good life and you be decent and taken care of. There's no judge checking to see the welfare of the child. And then I transitioned into losing my only relative on paper, right? My grandmother. Then her children abandoned me, to me just being homeless. I lived behind that Walmart for about 3 months of my teenage life, trying to survive. And not every day was a hot, nasty day on that nasty, stinky, funky concrete, or eating out of a trash can, or taking baths in Walmart. Sometimes, I would be able to, I call it couch surfing, sleep with different friends, at their houses, going, to and fro. What they call the old school people say, pillar to post. Baby, I was pillar to post. Like, I was over here, over there. Can I spend a night, please? Just one night, because I really just needed hot water. I needed to be able to take a bath, so that I didn't mind suffering. But it's another thing where you have to suffer, be hungry, and be funky. So if y'all can imagine, a 14-year-old kid trying to hold the pressure of life all together at one time. And in between couch surfing and, the noise in the background, how long she gonna stay here, who is she, where's her family, where's her mama, how come her mama ain't looking for her, and I'm just trying to give you guys a picture of what that was like for me at 14. By the time you go through all of these analytics of living with Black moms, trying to figure out what's going on and who this child is and how long this child gonna be in my house, it turned into, once they found the truth out that I was abandoned, it turned into, well, you know what, baby, I didn't mind helping you for these couple of days, but if you stay here too long, you might get pregnant. And hearing that constantly over a period of time, I kept thinking the only way I'm going to have some type of permanency or some type of permanent place to stay is if I get pregnant, so that I don't have to worry about anybody kicking me out, because I need a permanent place to stay. And that turned into me actually getting pregnant. So because I just wanted somewhere to live. I didn't want to have to pack up and move. And you guys understand something. When you're not used to sleeping outside, and we're talking about bugs, flies, gnats, and then the trauma of having to sleep outside and then go to school the next morning, you can't wash that off, and you smell like outside all day, and you're trying to live in that world of teenage life where people are sneakering and talking about you and laughing, and you trying to hold it together, and you like, I know I stink, y'all, but I'm homeless. How do you keep that a secret? That, even thinking about it now, just reminds me of how hard that was to live through that. And to say, you know what, I wish I could focus in school, but I'm really here so that I can eat. Because if I don't, I won't be able to eat today. I get to the point to where, I carry the baby, I'm pregnant, I get more support, I get more people trying to help me figure out my situation, no problem, right? But then it comes down to me having to have the baby and then having to have daycare for the baby. And I didn't think that through. I still hadn't found anywhere permanent to stay. I'm 15 years old at this time now, early 15 years old. And now I got this baby. And what I did was I wasn't going to leave my baby anywhere. I took my baby to school with me. And to me, that was the best option. But I didn't know that taking my baby to school with me was an endangerment to my child. And so at 15 years old, instead of me going into foster care, which would have been normal, I was sued by the state of Texas for being homeless at 15 years old with a kid. I get to court, and my fight was very unusual. I was actually blamed for all of the things I had been through. And I was so confused because I thought that I was going to go back to getting that 3 years of support services that I had just received while I was in foster care, which was my 3 hots in the cotton. I'm going to be able to be with my baby and raise my baby. And finally, somebody sees what's going on with me and I can get help. Mm-mm. The entire time in the lawsuit, which I had no attorney, and I had not realized how serious this issue was. The entire time I was on paper as the mother of my kid, but my kid was now the victim, and I was victimizing my child instead of just both of us being a victim. So I was treated like a criminal at 15 years old, first time mom, trying to cure a homeless problem. I get in front of the judge. He gives me 3 requirements. He tells me, he said, look, you want to keep your kid? Yes, Your Honor, I want my baby. Well, you got to do some things. Okay, what you got to do? I had to get a GED, had to get a bank account, put some money in, and I had to find somewhere to stay. If I couldn't do one of those 3 things, then I couldn't get my kid back. And not to mention, he made me pay child support. So I had to pay child support broke, no money, nowhere to put my money, because life is happening for me and I don't even have an ID. I don't have nothing. I got a school ID that says Sharpstown Middle School, and then I got another ID that says Aldine High School 9th grade center. That was the extent of who I was. No social, no birth certificate, and not to mention no way to get this stuff too. So I was like, it was like I wasn't even here. And I had to figure life out. And that was very, very hard for me. So I adjusted to a new way of living around what my kid needed. And here it is. I need to meet this judge's requirements. And I go back to what I know how to do, which is survive. And I want my kid. But I was in church. I went to church faithfully. I bring this issue up to the members of my church. And at that time, church was all I had. I mean, baby, I love me some Jesus still to this day. And Jesus is the very reason why I even survived human trafficking. And I'm very proud because the Bible says many of the affliction of the righteous, but God delivers him out of them all. So don't get it twisted, okay? I love me some Lord. And I tell this issue to some of the church members, and they decide to hook me up with another young lady who's about my age. And she was 18. We were about the same age, and we were going through some of the similar things. She had 2 children. I only had 1 child. And so they thought that it would be good for us to hook up with each other because we were close in age, which not a bad idea. This isn't too far-fetched of an idea. But socially, it wasn't good because you got two young girls who are both suffering. Now they have to put their minds together about how to stop the suffering. And so if you've never been exposed to anything other than what your environment exposes you to, then you gonna figure out how to do a bad thing a good way. Does that make sense? And that's about where we were with each other. It was a bad thing, but let's try to do it in a good way. And the option from my friend was, hey, I work at a strip club. Why don't you take my ID since I'm already 18 and you go work at another strip club while I work at another strip club using the same ID. We use the same, her driver's license, because I did not have one. You use it and you go and you work as a waitress. Well, what you mean work as a waitress? I don't know anything about hospitality industry. I know nothing about serving alcoholic beverages. This is so new to me. All I know is the box wine that my grandma and my auntie used to drink, and the Carlo Rossi, the Carlos Rossi that come in the jar sometime. That's all I know. The Seagram's gin, Mad Dog 2020. You know, I don't know nothing about serving no liquor though. I just know how to go to the refrigerator and get it when somebody tells me to go get it. That was the extent of me serving alcohol. And so I take her advice and I say, you know, this is a great idea. And she tells me, you know, you can go work and my boyfriend and keep your baby. Didn't think anything about it. Sure, keep my baby. I can get a bank account. I can do this. I can do everything it is I need to do. I was making about $75 a week. I'm sorry, $75 a day serving at the strip club, which isn't too bad back in the early 2000s, right? Because I don't have an apartment. I'm not paying lights, gas, water, things like that to that nature. I just needed to show that I could be, you know, fiscally responsible for my kid. And I was just trying to prove this to the judge at 15 years old, though. And so I let him keep my baby. I'm working all night. I'm sleeping during the day. And one day, this same gentleman, which was her boyfriend, so I didn't think anything of it because we were all living together. He tells me, you know what? You can't get your kid back until you pay me $200 a day. And that's when, I don't know if I could say it, but that's when shit got real. Like that is when my eyes opened up and I realized, okay, this is deeper than rap. Like, and he knew what I was doing was illegal, but he also knew that I was never going to tell the judge that I was working in a sexually oriented business. You see what I'm saying? He knew I was trapped. He knew I was never going to open my mouth about any of that because he knew that I would have been blamed for putting myself in that predicament instead of me needing help and somebody, an adult, helping me. And that's what ended up happening to me. And from there, I got this man who's making, you know, about $6,000 a month off of me, keeping my kid, making me do this at this point. Originally, it was on me. But when he made me do that, at that particular point, that became forced child labor. And right there, that is considered labor trafficking. You cannot withhold somebody's life, somebody's child, somebody's family member to force them to work anywhere to bring you the money, and then they make out with nothing. And so that was my life. And of course, I complained about it. And I didn't have nobody to talk to, especially my girlfriend, because I just realized that I had been groomed to do something that I never thought to do. And she was already being pimped out. That was her pimp. I never saw it. You couldn't pay me $1 million and tell me that he was tricking my friend. I thought they were in a relationship with each other. And when you're living in a house with your friend and that's your friend, you ain't trying to be in their business anyways. You're not trying to be, and I was in such a desperate situation. I was as nice and peaceful and respectful and coachable, and I had adjusted to whatever little piece of corner in their house I can live in. So I was not trying to interrupt the situation anyways, and I'm just trying to help you guys understand what that was like for me, that I ended up being sucked into labor trafficking just like that. This guy, because I only got 3 minutes left, guys, this guy goes to the strip club and he's bragging about how much money he's making off of me. And the other girls in the strip club who, because I didn't have anybody to talk to at that point, all I could talk to was the strippers at the strip club. The strippers at the strip club had already told another pimp that's in the club, has been watching me all this time, what's going on with me. The pimp that's sitting in the club, who I don't know he's a pimp, he asked me one question, you guys, and he said, aside from how you doing, what's your name, it was, how can I help you? And how can I help you turned into me living in the house with this guy, moving. I ended up leaving the other pimp because they fought in the strip club and the other guy won. So I'm thinking he defended my honor. It went from me living in the house with the new guy, the courts having to take the new guy's address and get all his information and da, right? No problem there. My kid transitioning from the old house to the new house, me transitioning, all of this stuff. And then it's, baby, I need you to make some money. What you mean make some money? Because I'm not in the strip club at this point because he's defending my honor. I'm rescued at this point. I need to, I can't get your hair done anymore. I need to pay bills. I need to do something. And I need turned into me trying to negotiate what you need to do as my man. Like, can you go work here? Can you do some electricity work over here? Like, I'm trying to figure out. And when you in this type of relationship and you think it's your boyfriend, it's not. There are no shared experiences. You supposed to bring this man money, period. This man gets me to the house. I am cornered. My back is against the wall. I cannot move anymore. The court system already know my business. This man put me in a car, takes me to a hotel on the north side of Houston before I get out the car, because I think I just had a fight with my man. We over it. He tells me to dress up. It gets pretty. He takes me to a hotel outside of Houston, inside the north side of Houston. And he gives me a key card to the hotel room. And he tells me, if you do not come out of there with my money, I'm going to kill you. And that was it. Everything I had experienced in the last 5 or 6 years in my life, from 11 years old all the way to 15 years old to now 16 years old, has been a reflection of something that never got settled. And that right there is how I was sex trafficked, just like that. And it didn't stop. So I probably, from that time, because that was me being broke in, that's capitalization. I had to get broken in. When you traffic, it means to be traded. I probably slept with about 5 different men a day to meet my quota. And from that time until about 19, 20 years old, because there was some time back and forth while I was in the military, I probably slept with about 1,500 different men.
Well, Dr. Hamilton, I thank you for being bold enough to share your story. You've been able to be vulnerable with our audience, to give your pain a purpose, so that it's not just pain. You're pain to teach, to understand. Last week we talked about the terminology of all of these things. Let us see what it's like. Where is your child now?
That is a great question. So I have 8 children. 2 of my children come from my human trafficking experience, not the first child. But that first child who went through that with me, he is the first high school graduate in our family.
Awesome.
And today he works in law enforcement. And so I am super proud of him. And he actually works at the Pulaski unit in where is the Pulaski unit? At the jail. He doesn't work for, because he don't work for Harris County, but he works in law enforcement at the Pulaski unit. Death row. He does the death row and stuff. And I'm really, really proud of him that he went the law enforcement route. And to see him on this side of justice is amazing. That is my result of love, support, fighting each other, getting into it with each other, and he still made the right decisions and stuff. So I'm super proud of my son. He's amazing.
Awesome. It is so amazing to hear a story that is so horrific, but to see the other side. An amazing survivor. And it is so good. And even that is just inspiration, far from just the fact that you were trafficked, but the fact that you're a survivor. And you are an amazing survivor. We are, and so it's awesome. Before we sign off, Tracy, Ann, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I just want to thank Dr. Hamilton for sharing her story. And there's one thing I just wanted to take away from it, and you mentioned it a couple of times, is the trauma that's associated with the experience.
Yes.
Trauma has a name now. We call it adverse childhood events. So
Yes.
I just plant that seed for maybe another discussion in the very near future. It's not only related to human trafficking, but you sowed a seed that is to be continued. So thank you.
Yes, and you absolutely right with the ACEs. So according to ACEs, and for my psychology majors out there, and Miss Lucas brought it up as well earlier tonight before we got on. But according to ACEs and per my childhood trauma, I should have only lived to about 25. Mm-hmm. I wasn't supposed to make it to 35. I'll be 36 years old this year. And I know some of y'all are tired of hearing my story, and you're like, oh, we hear your story all the time. And first of all, everybody hasn't heard my story. But I want to be very clear. Only 1% of survivors of human trafficking actually make it out. So if you can imagine how many people are pissed off telling my story because they are connected to it in some kind of way. So don't get it twisted. It's not easy. It wasn't easy for Peter. It wasn't easy for Paul. It wasn't easy for none of the disciples to talk about Jesus. It's the whole reason why Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Because nobody wanted to be associated with somebody who was considered a villain. And I was considered the villain, not the pimp. I was considered the villain. And so now, because the Bible says he'll make your enemies your footstool, now the pimp is considered the villain. And God has vindicated and redeemed me. And we see a prime example of Jehovah Gamola, God of my recompense. We see just the recompense. We see me being redeemed like Mary Magdalene had been redeemed in front of everybody. And so I just want people to receive, when you hear my story, the realization of redemption, the realization of repentance, mercy from God, gratefulness, how much God will care about you, that he will leave the 99 to go and get the one, y'all. And so that's what that ACEs is about. That ACEs is about studying how many kids actually can make it out of this. They study the AQ, which we talk about IQ, we talk about EQ, but we barely talk about AQ. IQ is the measurement of your intelligence quotient. EQ is your emotional side of quotient, but AQ is your adaptability. And so my adaptability is on fleek, that you can take me out of the mud, out of the rocks, out of concrete, out of the dirt, you guys, and still I have this attitude, this consciousness about confidence, about maturity, and about maturation into a private and public sector as an executive. I'm a business owner. I create jobs. People used to create jobs. I used to create money and jobs for other people. Now I create jobs and money for other people to become taxpaying citizens. And if you don't know what being a part of that world is like when you're making a progressive untaxed income, where the state can't follow you, the feds can't follow you, you know, you don't want to be a part of that world, because you will be a part of that world that's gangster. And they will come for you. And when you stop making money, remember what happened to Jesus when he was messing up the money for the Romans and stuff. They went after him. And so because I talk about this, and because I can show you how demonic and occultive and how just oppressive this is to our children's mind to be a sugar baby. We never grew up, nobody in your generation grew up saying they wanted to be a sugar baby. And I want to have a sugar daddy and stuff. Y'all, this is oppressive mentalities, you guys, that is sucking our children dry and forcing mamas, hard-working Black mamas, to look for their children in the middle of the night, and they got to go to work, but the insurance is connected to their job, and the food is connected to their job, and the lighting is connected to their job, but their children is out here, you know, hopping out the windows to go be with some dude they done met online. So the trafficking is the same. It's just that it moved platforms. It went from physical communication to a social experiment. And you can't fight against that. And you need specific warfare strategies. And that's the reason why I tell my story. Jericho could not be taken down by Joshua with a sword. Jericho got taken down. It was several different things, but it got taken down by praise. It got taken down with the Ark of the Covenant. They had to shout the walls down, and they had to have a priest. And this is the reason why Satan don't want the priest in the church talking about human trafficking right now. And we all know that the priests are the main attributors to sexual exploitation, because that's where it's happening at the most, in the church. But you need the priest to tear down the walls of Jericho. So we're not gonna get this right until we get the right people into position to give us prophetic warfare strategies to come against this occultic slavery mindset. Human trafficking is the second slavery. I do not play about this thing. I do not play about this type of demon, because you need more than help. Money ain't gonna fix this. You need divine strategy. You have to get a word from the Lord about how to deal with this issue. And if you notice in the Bible, Rahab was the only woman that was considered a prostitute. So go back and study why she was considered a prostitute, because I can tell you that that's a whole nother conversation. But you got Mary Magdalene of this time. You got the Rahab of this time. Human trafficking has been happening since the biblical days. Joshua warned us about human trafficking when Isaiah warned us about human trafficking when he told us, he said, at the end of days, at the end of time, there will be 7 women to 1 man. 7 women to 1 man. And if you don't think that's pimping, if you don't think that's sex trafficking, it is. There should not be 7 women to 1 man. And can't nobody compete with that. And so,
all right, Sister Dr. Reverend.
Okay. And so I just want to make sure we clear to listen to Dr. Lucas's.
Said to be determined, be continued.
Yes.
Today. I'm gonna let step in here for a second.
No, I was, can you hear me? Am I in a good
Yes.
place? I wanted to ask, you were talking about some solutions, and I wanted to share that recently in the past 2 weeks, I've heard about a program at the University of St. Thomas that they're including this a part of their curriculum, human trafficking, but they are creating human trafficking free zones. And I wanted to know, had you heard about that? And do you think that is a good strategy here in the Houston area to make people aware in the communities, to have signs around like yard shot signs, and especially with schools and so forth? So I wanted to get some feedback from you on that.
Absolutely. I think human trafficking zones are important. I mean, when they came out with the cell phone zones, we wasn't tripping about that, because it stopped people from being on their phone when it was time to pick up children, so we could stop hitting children in the street. and we can focus on the street and focus on the children. And that's unfortunate that we have to make up laws to force people to focus on our most prized possession, which is the next generation. We don't think about that all the time. In the no trafficking zones, at the same time that bill got passed, before that bill got passed, the 3 bills that I did had gotten passed. You know, right now, you cannot work in a sexually oriented business anymore because of what happened to me at 18, 19, and 20. You gotta be 21 years old. I did that bill. That was amazing. I made history at that time in my life. And did I frustrate some people? Absolutely. They had wars out in the street, and they did all they protesting and stuff and things like that. And probably had they known about the no trafficking zone, as well as that same bill, they probably wouldn't have been protesting out there. Right now, we still have 35,000 illicit massage businesses within less than 1,000 feet of Texas schools. 35,000. So of course we need that. 9% of perpetrators are strangers, only 9%. So 91% of students actually know who their groomers are before they get trafficked. 75% of minor sexual exploitation, the solicitation happened online. It happened online. And so here our numbers move, because 1 in 4 girls will have been sex trafficked or sexually exploited by the time they turn 18 years old. And then 1 in 6 boys will have been sex trafficked by the time they reach 18 years old. Not only did I pass that bill because of what happened to me and my story, I've also made it illegal for you to use somebody else's ID. Yo, this is a law now. So you can't work at one strip club and another strip club with the same ID like I did back in the day. Every strip club has to use the same process that every employer has to do, which is E-Verify. They have to go through E-Verify. And now, because Houston has pay to play, now we have it to where the strip club owners will be penalized heavily for hiring anybody without that E-Verify system. If they ID, they social, and their birth certificate don't match up, you out of there. You're gonna get fined. And so this is important that we know about all of this all at one time.
We are
And
gonna have to, girl, I am so glad that in so many levels you turned your pain into purpose, and talking about the laws you were able to pass and everything. It is amazing. Later on another time, I'm gonna have you back just to tell some more, because you have so much to say, and it is so empowering to hear your story. And I really thank you for being able to just share, like I said, to be so vulnerable to say, this is not this work.
right.
We are so over time, so we
And I
are
would
going
like to touch base with her and invite her to speak to my students at University of Southern California as well. So I'll reach out to you, Ms. Lee,
Absolutely.
to get-
Okay, so if you're okay with it, Nisi, I'll give Tracy your information.
Please.
Okay,
I would love
I'll-
to.
I'll text you
What a
her contact
blessing. You blessed
information.
my heart tonight.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
had church for us too. I want you to know.
Yes.
We
Thank
are
you.
going to
Thank
end,
you.
and I like to end every night with our call to action. My call to action is learn learn more about human trafficking. And so you know what to look for. We talked about it a little last week. There are some signs and symptoms. Look it up, read. You have access to the internet if you're watching this show right now, because it's on Facebook. So you have access to the internet. So look it up. And we didn't get to talk about ACEs. If you type in capital A, capital E, capital C, lowercase s, ACEs, it's going to come up if you forget. Adverse childhood experiences. Find out about that. And we're going to have a show just about ACEs in the future, because it's really, really good. So thank you. Your call to action is find out more about human trafficking, figure out what ACEs are, and always vote, vote, vote. She told you about laws that have been enacted. Laws that get put in place are impacted by who you vote into office. So I will
That's right.
always say vote, vote, vote. Become that educated voter, because it's important. So ladies, we are so over time. I'm just going to say thank you, thank you, thank you. for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
It
For
has
staying a lot
been.
longer than that.
And you solidified why it's important for us as a organization to continue to spread the word. So thank you so much.
And
Until we
thank you,
meet
your
again. Bye-bye.
organization, for taking up the mantle of human
everything.
trafficking.
Good night.